Hello and welcome. I'm John Binnie and I'm a professional spiritual and psychic mentor. I live here in Scotland and I've been doing this work for several years, and I want to give you a very clear warning, which is that this video is first of all for adults only, and that there is a tangible risk of you watching this video and picking up some of the energies or receiving unwanted or potentially unwanted, what I would call mixed intentions around receiving negative energy and entity attachments. And this is because in this video, we will be both discussing the topic and also relaying messages from such an entity. I have created a safe space for this session. This is to help minimize as much as possible how much of that negative energy that does not serve your highest good comes through. I cannot and are not responsible for you continuing to watch this video. And if you do so, I would please ask your discretion and rely on your own judgment as to whether this feels like it's a good fit for you. And if you're not sure, I would recommend you don't watch it and that you continue on and perhaps visit my website, johnbinnie.com, and you could try out some of my free meditations for negative energy protection, removal, and energy clearing. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm not going to explain the safe spaces I have created. And in part, that's to help stop people from copying exactly what I've done, but also to add an air of mystery, and that often helps when we're protecting ourselves. And I'd like to thank one of my members, Laurie, who requested today's video. Thank you so much for this request. It's the first time I've been asked to do something like this. And I'll just read out the questions that you've asked as we go, and I will bring in my guides, or one of my guides specifically has offered to assist, as well as my higher self. So first of all, you've said, not sure if this is possible or advisable, but I was thinking it would be fascinating if you interviewed a negative entity. So I must say my first reaction was I did not want to do it. And then I asked my spirit guides, and also Source came through to me as well. And there was this really beautiful, very humbling experience, which was this message that we all deserve a voice. We all have the right to, freedom of speech. We all have the right to free will. And even the term that I frequently use, negative entity, some people call them dark entities, that it is dualistic in some way. It causes separation, and perhaps a more accurate term for negative entity are beings, energies that perform actions that do not serve our highest good, or negative entities for short. I'd also like to be clear that I'm not inviting any demons into this safe space, nor into any of this work. And I'd like to keep the contact with any negative entities as limited as possible, and also to as protected as possible. So Laurie suggested not to channel it directly, but perhaps use spirit guides as an intermediary to get its perspective. And to help explain, yes, intermediaries, there's lots of different ways that you can utilize to help protect yourself. But note that I use the term help. So there is no such thing as perfect protection, especially in particular when you have a mixed intention. So the very contact with such entities is highly risky. it is highly dangerous because it can result in attachments attaching onto you. And then also that intermediaries, can be helpful, but the very energy of what comes through, the messages themselves, the potential woundings or fear triggers or almost like fear addiction that it can cause within us can make us more susceptible to negative entity attachments. So I'm proceeding very cautiously with this. And if any of this just doesn't feel right to you, especially if you don't have a regular practice, then perhaps you'd like to stop watching this video now. Okay. And you've gone on, Laurie went on to say, ask the first question. So it's a series of these questions. The first question is it a contract we make with them, negative entities, before we arrive? So before we come into this lifetime, do we make contracts with these entities? Now, this is the first question, so I'm just going to ask one of my guides and my higher self to create a connection through our safe space. So the answer is yes, many of us do create contracts, agreements. Perhaps another way of describing it is our souls, just before we incarnate, and some people say it's within about 80, 90 days before we incarnate, we make a series of choices about the lifetime that we will come into and experience. And in that lifetime, there are events. There are some big events, like big traumas, big successes, big life-changing experiences, and our soul is aware of those. Our soul will also be aware of some themes. So, for instance, if it's a theme of regularly attracting or picking up, smaller negative entities, like these small, leech-like beings that can stick to us, that it's not like a contract with that specific being, but more with the theme of being vulnerable to those attacks. Some of the larger entities, and this is John speaking from my experience, yes, some of them do have contracts with us, some of them do have agreements, and sometimes they're here to, how to describe it, like help in the short term, even though they are causing us harm, that it's not for our highest good. And that's where like doing good becomes a bit gray, right? It's like if someone's numbing your pain, that might be good for 10 minutes, but it's not good for the rest of your life. And the answer, so I'm not going to explain how I'm relaying the questions, but the entity that answered that question about is it a contract that we make with them before we arrive, this was an entity, very interestingly, it was an entity like a leech-like entity, and it was floating between hosts. So it was looking for the next host, which in part made it dangerous to communicate with. But also it was showing this kind of like, its initial answer was like this kind of random effect as well. Like it's, you randomly contract. Isn't that funny? Like we sometimes use that word, like contracting a contagious disease, like for example, that's what it's like. And I'm just going to make sure that that same entity moves on. Okay. The next question is, do they evolve too? Okay. So let's ask. So the first answer is that they grow. So just like a tick or a leech, as examples, that if a negative entity attaches to you, it can feed off of your fear, for example, and grow. And growth also depends on the entity, the being, the host, so the human that they've attached to. Some of their So the short answer is yes, they evolve, but it's more like they consume a lot of energy from their host. They can often pick up intentionally and accidentally it's the energy, the soul signature, the DNA of the host, and that can cause them to intentionally or accidentally evolve their abilities. And some, I know some very advanced beings, it's John speaking, some very advanced beings that have had to deal with advanced negative entities. They're capable of, it almost feels like mimicking. They're able to consume and then mimic the superpower of the host. And there's no limit to these answers. These are just some of the experiences, and these are just some of the answers we're getting from these entities. What are the sorts of things that humans can do that open up the door to them? Okay, now I'm going to keep this like a short answer because I don't want to create lots of fear or create opportunities for beings to attach. So let me just ask. So these negative entities see us as humans energetically. So they are primarily energetic, not exclusively energetic, but primarily energetic. And what they see us, so when they look at our bodies, they see they see these like, how to describe it, like woundings. So if there's a heart wound, what this entity was showing us was a bit like a different color, so like a darker patch, sometimes some red or like lower vibration colors. And they're often really fast, they're often attracted, not always. None of these answers are exclusively true, right? They are just, and none of them might be true given the nature of the beings that we're asking, but they are answers all the same. But what I saw was this entity like looking at me and then looking at any areas that were darker or like darker red. And there's also a lot of interest in the contrast. So having a very high vibration and then a very deep dark wound, like that range, that frequency range between your lightest light and your darkest darkness is very attractive to these entities because it's like, it shows that it's like fertile ground. Like if it was a field, to grow crops, they'd be like, well, there's opportunities to grow here because there's such light. And it's almost like when you bring such high vibration light down into fear, it generates even more energy. And you might be familiar with this term that, light workers or people that are, working on themselves become much more attractive, like a moth to a light or to a flame. And I did miss the question, what does that track look like? And this was do they evolve to? What does that track look like? I feel like I've answered some of that. I think some more, I would also explain that they can grow in their capabilities, and I often see beings like becoming, to me, in my third eye, they appear, instead of just being an entity outline or like a shadow in the shape of a specific form, often aligning with leeches, spiders, beetles, bugs, snakes. They're like the kind of earthbound animal similar shapes. They're not these earthbound creatures, but they can evolve to becoming larger, more intelligent, and that's within a lifetime. And then to finish off the question about what sort of things can humans do to open the door to them, wounds traumas, unresolved shadows. And let me ask if there's anything else, because I didn't want to give too many answers to this. An addiction to fear. Now that is fascinating, right? So we're about to come on to some of that. So the next question is, can movies and media consumption open doors for them? Yes. The movies themselves create portals where these entities can travel through. Your phones, your TVs are black mirrors, and so they're perfectly, TV monitor, like computer monitors, all these things. So they're perfectly created to allow a smooth transit for these entities as possible. But also the actual triggering of the fear within you, because your mind doesn't know the difference between what is watching on a TV or phone compared to what you're experiencing, in the real world. And so if you choose to put your consciousness, your mind into these scary, traumatic experiences, then yes, you are inviting these in. And I was also seeing that the actors and actresses, the cast, the people that put together the movies can also be susceptible to attracting these entities to attach to them. And that finally, you creating fear within yourself makes it much more attractive to them to attach to you. Okay. And then you've asked, or can addictions to these be a symptom of their presence? Yes, there are many symptoms of their presence, and one of them is you constantly triggering fear or fear-like thoughts within you're kind of fooled to thinking that it's you getting worried or being scared about something, and that's that fear addiction starting to pick up. And this is a segue to the next question: are there telltale symptoms of them that you can detect without psychic abilities? I would say, well, I can give my answer first of all, which is yes. Just look out for repeatedly worrying about something, repeatedly having thoughts go to specific, trauma or shadow or something that you keep, reconnecting with. Okay, I'm back. I was just taking a quick comfort break. So we were being asked about, are there telltale symptoms of them and can you detect them without psychic abilities? So they're hard to detect. They numb you, they numb your body. It's like they seem to be able to numb part of your consciousness when they attach to you. That's the biggest superpower they have. The second is that they can fool you to believing that their actions are as undetectable as possible. So these actions include like triggering thoughts within you and you visiting traumas. And they will, as silently as they can, consume the fear energy from you. And I was just being shown, so this is one of my guides showing me this, that, for example, if you had an entity a small like leech-like entity that was in your intestine, that what it would do is it would lightly try and connect in with your solar plexus and try and get you to feel lack. So worrying about, money is a great one because you never have enough money. There's no such thing as enough money. Some things can also apply to food, etc. And then what it would do is as it triggered those fear aspects within you, is trying to encourage you to feed it. So for you to send that fear energy to that place within you. It doesn't really care like what you do. So for example, if you just start eating a lot of food, like more food, like binge eating food to help fill your stomach, which can often help us feel less lack, at least for a moment. But it can do things like that. So trying to look out for these patterns. There's if you listen to what I was saying, or if you think about what I was saying, there's a pattern here, which is the trigger and then your reaction. And they are all part of how they feed, because they're the ones helping you trigger yourself and then helping feed off of what then happens. So without psychic abilities, perhaps looking for your patterns of when you're stepping into fear in particular and challenging yourself, like, why do I keep doing this? You can also starve them, right? So you can, or get them to leave you simply by catching yourself in the moment whenever you're finding yourself in fear, and then bringing yourself, fear is interesting for the use of being aware of something, but you don't need to obsess constantly about fear like I have many times in my life. And so you can, every time you observe yourself doing this, find ways of being brave, find ways of trying to do a little bit of the thing that you're most scared of, or facing it, doing a lot of it. And that will cause the entity not to be able to feed from you, or not, it needs your energy to survive. What happens? So next question is, what happens to them if you send it love? Can they put up boundaries too? So let me just ask. So this is from a different entity through one of my guides. The answer is, like, they hate love. It's like it's almost like it burns them. Like it was like pouring hot. I was shown this entity feeling like it was like hot, like scalding hot water was poured over it. And it really didn't like it. And it's because what it does is it like causes it to, love causes it to raise its vibration, and it really doesn't want to. And that's against its free will, which is why it fights it. And can they put up boundaries? Yes, they are free will. They are beings. They have free will, and they can create their own boundaries. What makes it more difficult is that they just like us. Like if we consent to something, and then we try and create a boundary to counter that consent, it becomes a mixed consent, mixed intention, and that they really struggle, with that. So, for example, if they attach to us, and then they're trying to draw energy from us, but then they try and create a boundary that says, "Oh, but I don't want to receive love from you. I only want to receive fear." It's a mixed consent. It's a mixed boundary. So. And you can't, effectively silo the energy like that. So they struggle just like we do, with those same, universal laws. The next question is, what attracts them to specific plants and animals? So I'm just being shown an entity attaching to a tree, which is really fascinating. So it's attached. It's quite a tall tree onto its trunk, and the tree is saying, well, I allow these attachments because I see that there is an importance to the natural order and harmony. The role of the tree, the plant, seems to be to temporarily host a negative entity so that it can feed. it seems very unsatisfactory for the entity, almost like a bit of a stepping stone, like maybe just a few hours or days at most that it could remain attached. And I think that's also why it's a good idea to ask a tree before you connect with it, like ask it permission, because it might tell you no, and I have had trees say no to me. So this could be one of the potential reasons why you might get a no. But, come back another day and ask again. And then for animals, animals are just like us, but I was showing in particular our pets are very vulnerable because they can absorb a lot of our energy. So, it's a very self-sacrificial, how to describe it, like taking this energy, this negative energy from us, our cats and dogs and guinea pigs and all our pets and animals close to us. They can, when they see us struggling, they often invite in these entities or try and convince them to attach to themselves. So that's an important understanding to have. And I'm just asking what's interesting about animals. Yeah, it seems to be really the same patterns we heard of, like trauma, wounds. Same with physical wounds. Like these are areas of interest that can attract negative entities. But it also might be who the animal is around. Like they might be the negative entity might be trying to get to the human who's close to the animal. So they might see it as a stepping stone. Are they a necessary component of our dualistic matrix to balance the light? So let me just ask this question. Okay, so Archangel, excuse me, just 1 second. Archangel Michael and Source were answering this. So the answer is about, was first of all, it is not a dualistic matrix. Our matrix is dualistic, true. But our reality outside of our constricted matrix on Earth, which is constantly, this matrix is constantly collapsing, and of it, what remains, these negative entities are really just a breeding and feeding ground. So there is an element of truth that there is part of their role that is required for balance. This is true. And then it's also true that they are necessary to help us, almost like how to describe what I'm seeing. Like when a leech consumes good blood from us, it also takes away bad things in our blood, which is why, Victorians, and I think sometimes leeches are still used in modern medicine. So there's a helpful aspect to it as well. And so for negative entities, it is sometimes helpful, but it also feels like so this was why Source wanted to have a say in this answer, is that Source's answer is everything is equal. Every being is equal. And even in the question, there's like, we're implying that, maybe they're lesser, or maybe because they're dark or lower vibration, that they're lesser than us. And they're not, right? They are just another being, just like us in the universe, trying to get along, trying to exist, trying to survive. And they choose to harm other beings to do so. And that is their free will choice. So yes, they are part of the balance of the universe, which is why I show them a lot of respect as much as I reasonably can. And what higher purpose do they serve? So I'm just going to open this question a little bit to higher purposes. So what higher purposes do they serve? In the beginning, in the early days of the universe, there was balance and harmony, and these negative entities, these beings at the lower end of the frequency spectrum, were often intentionally invited in to help, to feed, and then they'd be gently encouraged to leave. And there was much less of a battle and a divisiveness that we have today, even compared to even me, even compared to how I treat these entities. And yeah, this higher purpose is that they are here to help serve. And often, how would I describe it? Often we just talk about serving the light because it sounds good, or serving others because it sounds good. They also serve others, but their service is through negative behaviors, so typically through harming others. And remember what we said earlier, our souls, so this is the harmony or dichotomy of the universe, is our souls choose to come into these lifetimes to experience a lot of trauma. And as part of that, we often pick up these negative entities and attachments. They can even be part of the trauma. And what's fascinating is that is their form of service to others. Like our souls choose these traumas to grow. And so without these entities, we would not be able to achieve the same soul growth. So this is their higher purpose, to help our souls grow. And then I'm just reading the next one before. Okay, I think it's fine to share. This is, in my case, in retrospect, and so this is from the person that submitted the questions. It served a purpose in making me more understanding and compassionate towards others that struggle to shake off negative aspects of themselves. It is easier to see their innocence. And I'm just asking about this. So this is a mix of answers, Source, Archangel Michael, and also my guide that's been assisting with this. We're saying, yes, that's wonderful. There's such a huge lesson, and they're saying, okay, and this is my lesson as well in making this video, is to extend understanding, love, and compassion towards a greater frequency range. So not to be scared of, facing these difficult conversations with entities that may be out to attack you, to hurt you. It doesn't make them any lesser than us, right? And then I won't share the next, but it was just a reference to seeing a horror movie at an early age. And let me just see before we finish if there's any other questions or answers that wanted to be asked or shared. So Archangel Michael, who I work with through almost every entity removal, is just reminding me, I do have conversations. Every time I remove an entity from someone, I have a very brief conversation. I always allow them to speak their truth. Now, I always kind of caveat that and say, this entity may well be lying, and it's true for all these answers that we've heard today. They may all be lies, right? But let's face it, like if they're all humans, how often do humans lie to each other? Even angels, do angels lie? Like you just get to decide. You get to decide in your heart how this feels. and whether it resonates with you or not. The way I tend to experience these and integrate these truths or not truths is I allow them to become an additional data point, like a reference point, almost like, well, that's another interesting web page or story or book or something that someone said that I can decide to or not pay attention to. Or I can decide like yes or no, does it feel like it's part of my knowing or my reality? And so there's a lot of concepts in this session today for you to reflect on and to think about. And it feels like, and I'm also just being asked to share that really the strongest protection you have against unwanted visitors, right? And so much of this applies, like so similar to our homes, the buildings or vehicles and wherever we call home, is that, have a lock on your door, decide whether you want to lock it or not. And that's like your boundary. Decide when something knocks on your door, whether you want to let it in or not. Decide whether you want to, have these aspects of you, like your shadows, like areas of your heart, traumas in your life that you hide from yourself. And in particular, that you hide from others. They are like your attack footprints. Like these are what's the word? Almost like baiting these entities. Like they would be really interested in attaching to you where you have these emotional, energetic, and physical traumas. So a happy, healthy human with a strong boundary is a huge, a massive help into stopping these things attaching. Okay, and Archangel Michael's saying, look, they've been around for since before humans, and because they were just attached to other living things, they can attach to any living thing, and that they're not to be feared, that they are part of our reality, and it's important for us to treat them with respect and dignity and compassion. And they get to choose, just like us, do they continue to lower in vibration, maintain their vibration, raise their vibration? And, there's not a right or wrong here. There's just a very broad frequency range of dark to light. And, we all get to choose how we behave towards others. Okay, and let me ask how to safely close the session. So I'm to do a little work now and then to do a tidy up afterwards as well, after I stop the video. So I'm just going to help clear out this session. Okay. Okay, good. Wonderful. Well, I hope you found this helpful. It was very fascinating. I don't know how many entities we ended up talking to. There's quite a few. It seemed really important to ask different entities, different answers. And yeah, if you have subjects for other videos, and please proceed with caution about what you ask me to do. Because even for the people that have asked or shown interest in this video, it might not be right for you. But if you've watched it now, hey, it's too late. You've already watched it. But definitely take good care of yourself today. Pay particular attention to some of the topics that came up, like keeping a happy, healthy you. I definitely recommend you do a clearing today, and keep an eye on your energy and some of those patterns of connecting with fear, or it might even be like constantly thinking about this video and going back to it in your thoughts or watching it again, like there's some telltale signs to that you may have an attachment. And so, yeah, just encourage you to, like anytime, have a regular meditation practice, strong boundaries, and to clear anything that doesn't serve you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure doing this, and I'm sending so much love from Scotland. Take care.